I tried making a poison build centered around the unique Dagger boosting acid flask levels and poison damage. Is Draughts release an undiscovered jewel or disposable toxic waste? Let's find out. Acid Flask is not a commonly used skill in last Epoch. Only 1.8% of builds actually use this skill, and for Season 2, only one build has surfaced using it. This is probably due to the huge mana nerfs of Explosive Trap introduced in Season 2, and since Explosive Trap is arguably the best way to use Acid Flask by its skill node proccing it, it makes sense that the entire community shy away from Acid Flask. And for the builds that do utilize it, most of them convert its damage to either fire or cold. And there are logical reasons for that, as going in these directions make Acid Flask pretty strong. But why do so few go for poison? Well, poison got an insane bad reputation, and arguably for good reasons. Each poison stack has an underwhelming base damage of 28, and compared to some of the other damage over time types, it doesn't stand a chance on paper. But I don't care about paper, I care about action, so I dove right into it like a raccoon into an open dumpster. Full commitment, zero hesitation. When doing preparations for the build, an item popped up in my head. The unique dagger that gives plus levels to acid flask and poison damage. Someone must have tried this out and made a build, right? Well, yes, there are two, and both of them are old. Not a good sign, and I knew I was probably on a bad track here. But then again, someone had to try this, and I made myself the chosen one. Obviously, the rogue class is the only one having access to acid flask, so the class selection was already made for me. I started out with melee and flurry, and after a while shurikens as a shield around me. From level 15 I used the riverbend grasp, which is an immense leveling item for throwing skills such as shurikens. Thorn Slinger is another great item available from early on, giving plus levels to physical skills and a chance to bleed and movement speed. I also used the Castrol body armor for even more movement speed and a good chance to get haste on hit. This setup carried me through all the early levels, but this was only the beginning. At around level 32, I switched to using Acid Flask directly. This made me very strong and mobs and bosses were melting away like butter. But something was missing. It didn't apply as many poison stacks as I'd hoped for, and the area of effect didn't feel that great. So at around level 47, I switched to using Explosive Trap. You see, as mentioned previously, there's a highly interesting node in its skill tree where each trap flings an acid flask at the target location. This would make it possible to throw many more acid flasks at the same time, but there was an even better upside to this. By speccing into the Poison Puddle node, poisoning enemies every second after the initial explosion, I could bypass the cooldown introduced in this node, as it was now Explosive Trap proccing acid flask indirectly. This inflicted many more poison stacks on the enemies in addition to the great AoE with Explosive Trap. But what about the mastery? There are no clear and logical choices for Acid Flask, as all masteries are viable depending on what skills you support it with. Without offering too much thought, I went for Blade Dancer. It felt okay during the campaign, and when I came to the early endgame I was still cruising. But as the corruption grew, more and more doubt entered my mind. It felt weaker and weaker. Now I was worn out, fragile and vulnerable. Then I took action. For the first time in my last Epoch career, I ate some humble pie and used a mastery respec. I had a vision coming to me, and that vision told me to master the craft of taming the mighty falcon. The bird didn't exactly come willingly. At first it just stared at me like I had insulted its ancestors. But a few worms and an inspirational training montage later, we were soaring. I trained my great bird to use my acid flasks in its vicious attacks, and how it could apply devastating ailments and effects that I myself had acquired through my intense training. This made the falcon into a menace on the battlefield, demolishing anyone in its path, and I pretended I was in charge. Together we built an unbeatable partnership, going higher and higher into the void's corruption, before we met our greatest challenge yet. Now, if you've enjoyed this video so far and want to stay tuned for the build guide video for the final build I ended up with, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. When we hit 400 corruption, things were not as rosy red anymore. The enemies got stronger and we didn't have that amazing connection like we once had. We tried everything, every passive respec possible, shuffling around gear with different stats and every skill available. Umbral blades for single target damage doesn't work, as it would have to replace shurikens, which gives us vital mana on hit to sustain the build. Removing glancing blow passive nodes and going all in on damage? No go, as we'd be dead before the enemies even smelled our falcon, who refused to take a bath for weeks. Like an old married couple, my falcon and I got on our nerves and started blaming each other for our shortcomings. We stopped finishing each other's attacks, the bird would intentionally miss targets just to prove a point, and I started calling him pigeon out of spite. Not my proudest moment. I even got so tired of my falcon's constant mocking of my research during this period that I got rid of it and replaced it with decoy. But we couldn't turn on each other. We went back to the basics, and it was at this moment that a light bulb turned on in my head. We have all of this critical multiplier on the daggers being as useful as a loading screen tip on your 400th death. There's got to be a way to utilize this. And then I remembered. A couple of gloves rotting away in my disorganized stash tabs. Salt the wound. Now these gloves give a high percentage of our added critical strike multiplier as poison penetration, meaning that the critical strike multipliers on our daggers finally had a purpose, a meaning. We could now stack additional crit multiplier and a portion of it would translate to poison penetration. That's awesome. But there's more. The gloves also give the same bonus for bleed penetration. Wow, now I knew I had to spec into some bleed as well, so I trained my falcon to show me our enemy's weaknesses, giving me a good chance to inflict bleeding wounds. All of this combined took our power to new heights again, and most importantly, it was a ton of fun to clear entire battlefields with a couple of throws, seeing our woeful enemies disintegrate before our eyes. Now we were back to being a happy couple, racing through the battlefields, never letting our enemies know what hit them. We defeated highly corrupted bosses, shade after shade, and used our poisonous flasks to clear enemy squads. We are currently sitting at 522 corruption and wondering about retirement soon. The Falcon wants to open a pest control business. Apparently poison is his thing now. But deep down we knew we couldn't rest. Not until the void was erased once and for all. We had to defeat Aberoth. First time we faced him, he wiped the floor with us at 20% remaining health. The Falcon blamed me. I blamed the evade button. We both blamed the portal for needing more Harbinger eyes. But something in us snapped. We got another eye, went back in, tightened the dagger grip. The Falcon fluffed himself up like he was Batman and I was Robin. And we did it. We beat him. It didn't come cheap, but we stood our ground, were patient and waited for the right moment. Then at 16% health, the Falcon took him down with a single strike. Maybe I was Robin after all. That was the moment I knew. This unholy flask-chucking, bird-bombing, poison-slinging mess of a build, it actually works. But before we call it a day and retire, we want to pass the torch, spread the knowledge to someone willing to continue what we started. Are you the chosen one? If you want to see the full breakdown of how this unhinged poison flask idea actually turned into a working build, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to not miss out on the upcoming final build guide video. And remember that you can also join the channel as a member with exclusive perks to support me making even more content like this. I highly appreciate all the support. And finally, if you want to see the other videos in this series, go ahead and click on the playlist showing on the screen right now.